Donald Trump just announced he is going to provide weapons to Ukraine, notably missiles, and I believe he specifically identified Patriot missiles and some ammunition, which they're running short on. But he's also suggested he's going to issue some severe tariffs on Russia and its trading partners within 50 days. I don't know where 50 came from. I suppose we can just ignore that. But it's a two-prong attack. We're going to arm Ukraine with more missiles and ammo, and we're going to sanction you down the road if you don't call it quits and end this conflict by way of some resolution. Of course, he's been trying to negotiate a settlement with Putin. Putin says fine, and all things good on the telephone call, only to start bombing Ukraine the minutes after the phone gets hung up. Now, over the weekend, they launched an amazing drone strike. What was it? More than 600 drones and missiles raining down on Ukraine. Practical question, Daniel Davis. Considering, as I have read, each Patriot missile costs $4 million. And the system itself that fires them, all the rockets and the machinery, the mechanisms, the equipment, the launcher, all of it together is more than $1 billion. How many drones can you shoot down with a Patriot missile, and can you keep up with a swarm of 600 plus at any given moment in time? Daniel Davis.
Not a chance. Your math is right, and your logic is sound. There's no way that this is going to have any impact in the air war. It's not going to help Ukraine out. And in fact, most of these interceptors are not supposed to be used on the guaranteed drones that you're talking about, the upgraded drones that Russia has used to now long range fire across the country. Those are best served by other kinds of platforms. But you just can't use those kind of missiles. You don't have that many. I mean, consider that the United States produces annually about 600 interceptor missiles annually. And you see one night there were 600 total air attacks that came in. So you would exhaust a year's supply if you only fired one per incoming missile. If you've ever seen any of the video of how the Patriot fires, sometimes it's just rapid fire in 2 and sometimes even 3 missiles per incoming missile. So you got to save those for only the hypersonic missiles or the Kinzhal, etc. And especially the hypersonic, the Patriot system almost never hits it. So you see that it's not that good. There's not that many, and it's not going to make a difference.
So if you're Vladimir Putin, you're, I guess, chuckling underneath your breath in response to the idea that the United States is providing additional weapons, including Patriot missiles, to Ukraine.
There was a huge sigh of relief in Moscow. In fact, I've heard some reaction from the Russians so far since yesterday was anywhere from mocking to laughter to relief. And in fact, as you know, markets are more emotional than they are actual market fundamentals. The Russian market shot up, had a big spike after the event, after the announcement yesterday, because they recognized that, number one, the air missiles and stuff are not going to change the outcome of the war, or even the air war for that matter. And number two, this alleged 50-day period before you're going to get into any kind of sanctions. I mean, has Trump held to a single deadline he set for himself in regards to Russia? The answer is no, and I don't know what anybody thinks is going to happen with this 50-day thing. And by the way, the two biggest targets of that would be China and India. Yeah. And I can't imagine that he would risk our economy and getting into a big trade war with those guys over Ukraine and sink our economy when he's now starting to get ready, ramping up for the midterm. So you got to see all these things together. It's not likely going to make any difference.
So the two threats: one, you have the weapons; two, you have the sanctions or tariffs. Those are the two things that are designed to get Putin to actually get on the phone call and engage in a substantive conversation about a resolution of the conflict. But the elephant in the room seems to me to be what that will look like. As you and I have talked time and time and time again, Russia has not backed off its core key provisions. They have absolute terms that they have insisted on. Ukraine refuses to abide by those. So it's a non-starter regardless of whether tariffs actually go in place or missiles actually show up.
Right, Russia is locked in, and nothing is going to dissuade them. I interviewed on the show last week a Russian journalist and former member of their military, and asked him point blank that question: is because the European Union, and especially Ursula von der Leyen and Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer, are constantly saying they want to force Russia into a peace that's acceptable to Kiev. And I said, can they do that? Is there any chance? And he said, listen, you can say anything you want, but until you force the Russian army to move back or to stop them, there's nothing that anybody in Moscow is going to do to change what they're doing, because you have to compel it on the front line. And he is 100% right. And there is no evidence that that's happening. As a matter of fact, in just the last 36 hours or so, there has been an acceleration in two key areas where Russia has advanced even further. In the most important area in Pokrovsk, and then in another secondary area, big gains on there. So there is a lot of concern on the Ukraine side.
And the other, further to the point, give them all the weapons and munitions and arms that you want, to the extent it's feasible. We still have a problem with Ukraine's military. It keeps getting smaller and smaller, a point that you and I have discussed many, many times over the months.
Yeah, you have a twin problem here. You got to keep things in context. You can't just look at the number. Wow, apparently, according to Axios, when Trump released this prohibition or whatever, this pause, there's a new package in the realm of $10 billion with drawdown authority, et cetera. 10. That's compared to the $61 billion that Biden last did in May of 2024. So you see already it's like a sixth of what we'd done before, which that 61 billion made no difference on the front line. And now then the Ukraine army is even smaller than it was at that time, and they're moving on the back foot. So you see net altogether, this is just, you might slow down the onslaught and you might not, but you're certainly not going to turn anything around or change the calculus in Moscow. That's the key point.
Do you think the Trump administration will start putting more pressure on Zelensky at some point to capitulate? I mean, I hate to use that word. I know that's the way Zelensky would view it, but listen, if you ain't holding a good hand and it just keeps getting worse, doubling down is not a viable option for you, Mr. Zelensky. You're going to have to tone it down and accept some of Russia's conditions in order to bring a peace.
Yeah, to piggyback off your analogy, it's like you're in a high stakes poker game, and you see in your hand here you've got a pair of sixes and a bunch of other lower cards, and that's it. And you know that there's at least a pair of face cards on the other side. You know that, and you keep putting more and more money into the pot just
Right.
to stave off being called. And that doesn't make any sense. But to answer to your question is I don't think so, because that's what Trump should have done like the first week of his administration. And he had many opportunities to do it since. And given that he's now basically gone all in and said, okay, yeah, we're going to give you more stuff. We're going to turn the spigots back on, even if it's only a little bit. It doesn't appear that he has any intention at all to compel Zelensky to do the logical, rational, moral thing for his country. So I think that he's just going to let it roll, and I don't understand why.
Well, not to poke holes in your analogy, which is a good one. It's the one I was thinking of, but in that poker game analogy, it's that scenario, except you're playing with your cards face up.
Okay,
I mean,
right. Oh,
seriously.
that's an even better one. That's exactly what we're. Both sides are playing court space.
Yeah.
That's a good one, man.